You forgive everyone who has hurt you, except the one who lives inside your skin. That is the quiet tragedy of your existence. You have learned to cradle the wounds of others, to patch their chaos with your patience, to stand in storms that were never meant for you. But when it comes to your own brokenness, you become a judge. You hold yourself to the fire without mercy. You wear guilt like armor, convinced it is virtue. You call it strength, when it is simply self-neglect dressed in noble clothes. You have mastered the art of understanding everyone else. You know how to excuse their cruelty, rationalize their absence, soften their betrayals with sympathy. But when it is your turn to falter, you show no compassion. You tell yourself to move on, to get over it, to be stronger. You speak to yourself as if to an enemy. It is not others who demand your silence. It is you. You confuse discipline with suppression, morality with martyrdom, love with servitude. The pain that fills your chest is not punishment. It is an audit, a divine accounting of every time you abandoned yourself in the name of peace. You mistake endurance for grace. But endurance without purpose is not grace. It is slow decay. The world has not conspired against you. It has simply revealed your imbalance, how much you've given without asking, how much you've carried without complaint, how much of your worth has been measured by the comfort of others. You were taught that goodness means being easy to love. You were praised for your patience, your empathy, your understanding. But each compliment was a quiet seduction, a promise that if you just kept giving, one day someone would finally give back. You called it kindness, but it was not kindness. It was fear. Fear that if you ever stopped saving, no one would find you worth saving. You became addicted to being needed. You mistook dependency for intimacy. You forgave, not because your heart was pure, but because you feared the loneliness that honesty might bring. You built your identity around usefulness, around being the healer, the forgiver, the steady one. You turned yourself into a sanctuary for the broken, even as your own walls cracked, and you kept going, because collapse felt like selfishness. The world applauded. They said, "You're so strong," and you believed them, not realizing that strength built on silence is not strength at all, but slow suicide. You carried other people's pain as proof of your goodness, but every time you did, you exiled your own. You've spent years building a home for others in your heart, but you've never stayed long enough to make it livable for yourself. You forgive everyone because it's easier than confronting the truth. You are terrified of your own resentment. You fear that if you ever let the anger rise, it would expose how much you've been diminished. So you bury it. You call it compassion. But compassion, when turned outward and never inward, becomes poison, toxic kindness. That's what it is. The kind of kindness that drains instead of heals. The kind that turns empathy into a weapon against yourself. You call it maturity to always understand why they did what they did. You say it's wisdom to let go, to be the bigger person. But sometimes, being the bigger person simply means you've learned to shrink more beautifully. The truth is this: you have mistaken peacekeeping for peace. You've mistaken being agreeable for being loving. And you've mistaken pain tolerance for growth. You think you are good because you suffer quietly. You think you are evolved because you forgive quickly. But tell me, what kind of growth leaves you emptier every year? What kind of peace depends on pretending? You have learned to love unconditionally, but not wisely. To forgive instantly, but not consciously. You have built a moral framework that punishes you for having needs. You have made yourself responsible for the healing of others while abandoning your own. And the cruelest part? You call it love. It's not love. It's self-erasure. It's the desperate hope that if you just keep giving, the world will one day mirror back the tenderness you've been offering. But the world doesn't work that way. The world mirrors your boundaries, not your sacrifices. It respects what you protect, not what you surrender. You keep forgiving others because it gives you a sense of control. It allows you to rewrite the story, to pretend you are above it, untouched. But you're not untouched. You're bleeding underneath the smile. You're cracking beneath the calm. Forgiveness, for you, has become anesthesia, the way you avoid feeling the full weight of what was taken. You think that by forgiving, you're freeing yourself. But you're not freeing yourself, you're absolving others while sentencing yourself to silence. Because forgiveness without acknowledgement of the wound is not freedom, it is amnesia. It is a denial of justice within your own heart. You say you believe in compassion, but compassion without truth is cowardice. You cannot heal a wound by pretending it doesn't hurt. You cannot honor love by allowing it to destroy your dignity. The one you've been waiting to forgive is not the one who left you, lied to you, or disappointed you. It is the one who watched it all happen and said nothing you, the one who saw the red flags and stayed, the one who begged for crumbs when they deserved a feast, the one who mistook survival for strength, the one who kept forgiving not because it was holy, but because it was habit. This is your reckoning. The moment when the mirror no longer flatters, when kindness no longer comforts, when the old narrative of nobility begins to rot in your hands, you stand at the border between who you were and who you must become, and the gatekeeper is your own guilt. You cannot walk into your new life until you forgive the part of you that kept yourself small to be loved. That is the paradox. You don't need to forgive them anymore. You need to forgive yourself for needing them so much. And yet, even now, I can feel your resistance. You still want to defend them. You still want to justify your silence. You still want to call your suffering a lesson, your loyalty a virtue. But listen carefully. There comes a point when understanding others becomes the most sophisticated way to avoid understanding yourself. You can no longer hide behind empathy. Empathy is not enlightenment when it costs you your voice. Compassion is not divine when it costs you your sanity. Mercy is not virtue when it becomes an excuse to keep betraying yourself. Your pain has purpose. It arrived to expose your imbalance. It came not to destroy you, but to introduce you to yourself. It came to rip off the mask of sainthood and reveal the wounded child beneath the one who never believed they were enough unless they were fixing someone else. You have mistaken suffering for depth. You have believed that to be gentle is to be good. But gentleness without strength is weakness, and weakness disguised as virtue is the most dangerous lie. So the universe sent you pain, the only teacher that cannot be ignored. It shattered your illusion of moral superiority, stripped you of the roles you played, and left you face to face with your naked self. The self that does not need to be kind to be worthy. The self that does not need to be forgiven to be free. And maybe now, as you sit in the quiet aftermath of everything that's fallen apart, you can see it, the pattern, the repetition, the endless cycle of overgiving and under-receiving, the endless bending in the name of love. And maybe now, for the first time, you're not angry at them. You're angry at yourself, not out of hatred, but out of clarity. Because you finally understand what you've done. You've been saving everyone else from the pain you refuse to face. This is where healing begins, not in softness, but in honesty. You don't need to become harder, you need to become whole. And wholeness begins where illusions end. Stop running from your own reflection. Stop dressing your self-neglect in spiritual words. You are not humble for letting people walk over you. You are not wise for enduring what you should have left. You are not kind for accepting what breaks you. You forgive everyone else because it's safer than facing the truth that you have been the source of your own suffering all along. And that is the liberation hidden inside the wound. When you finally see that you were never the victim of their cruelty, but the architect of your own captivity, you do not need to blame yourself. That's just another disguise for guilt. You need to see, to understand, to awaken, because once you see clearly, forgiveness changes shape. It stops being an act of surrender and becomes an act of reclamation. It becomes the moment you stop giving others permission to define your worth. Your suffering was not pointless. It was purification. The fire that burned you was the same fire that revealed gold beneath the ash. And now, perhaps for the first time, you can stand in the ashes of who you were and whisper the truth. You are done apologizing for existing. You are done mistaking exhaustion for love. You are done calling your silence peace. You are ready not to forgive the world, but to forgive yourself for trying to earn a place in it. You built your entire life upon a fragile architecture of dependency. You called it love, compassion, understanding, but at its core, it was fear wearing the face of virtue. You thought your goodness would save you. You thought that if you just kept forgiving, the world would eventually treat you with the tenderness you gave it. But the world does not trade in tenderness, it trades in boundaries, and you had none. You confused being needed with being valued. You mistook the gravity of others' dependence on you for the warmth of real connection. But dependency is not love. It is hunger. It devours. It clings. It takes and takes until you have nothing left to give, and then it blames you for being empty. You became a supplier of stability in an unstable world, the steady one, the understanding one, the one who would always say, "It's okay, but tell me, when did it ever feel okay? When did your calm ever comfort you? When did your understanding ever save you?" You built peace for others while exiling yourself from your own. You believed that being a good person meant absorbing pain without complaint. You thought that restraint was the same as maturity. You believed that to love unconditionally meant to accept whatever others gave, even if it was neglect. But what you called goodness was simply fear of being unloved. You were afraid that if you ever showed your limits, the illusion would collapse, that people would see you as difficult, selfish, ungrateful. So you became agreeable to survive. You polished your words, softened your tone, restrained your truth. You convinced yourself that diplomacy was strength, when in truth it was just another way to hide your need for approval. There is a quiet arrogance hidden in this humility. The arrogance of believing that your suffering redeems others. The arrogance of thinking your silence keeps the world in harmony. You carried the illusion that you were the noble one, the patient one, the better one, and in that illusion you found purpose. You were not chasing love anymore. You were chasing identity, redemptive dependency. That's the disease. The belief that your worth is found in how well you rescue others. You cannot exist without being someone's savior, someone's healer, someone's steady ground. You crave the moral high ground because it gives you leverage against your own helplessness. You need to fix because you cannot bear to be still. Stillness would reveal the emptiness you've been avoiding. You found comfort in pain, not because you enjoyed it, but because it gave you something to manage. It kept you distracted. It kept you from facing the question that echoes through your silence. If I stop saving everyone, who will I be? You wear selflessness like a crown, but it's made of thorns. Every act of forgiveness cuts a little deeper. Every act of accommodation erases a little more of you. And yet, you cannot stop, because the identity of the forgiver feels safer than the terror of being ordinary, unneeded, unseen, unchosen. You built your morality around sacrifice. You made exhaustion your proof of goodness. You believed that love must hurt to be real, that peace must be earned through suffering, and you admired your own endurance. You told yourself that pain purified you. But pain does not purify when it is self-inflicted. It only blinds. You have been trading your freedom for validation your entire life. You think you are selfless, but your selflessness is transactional. You give to be valued. You endure to be admired. You forgive to be seen as strong. Even your humility hides ambition, the ambition to be irreplaceable. And the world sees it. It rewards you with praise. You're such a good person, they say, as they hand you more weight to carry. You're so understanding, they say, as they vanish when you need understanding. They are not thanking you, they are identifying you. You are the person who never complains. You are the one who absorbs the blame. You are the safe one. You've become addicted to that identity, the saint of other people's chaos. Because if you ever dropped it, you would have to meet yourself without the applause. You would have to face the silence that comes when no one needs you. But here is the cruel paradox. In your need to be indispensable, you've made yourself invisible. They don't see you anymore. They see the role you play, the steady one, the forgiver, the healer. You've become an archetype, not a person. And archetypes don't get loved, they get used. You thought that love was earned through usefulness. But love that must be earned is not love. It's approval disguised as affection. It evaporates the moment you stop performing. You don't trust peace unless you're paying for it with pain. You don't trust joy unless it's born from sacrifice. You've been programmed to believe that life must always cost you something. And so, when someone treats you kindly, you feel uneasy. You wait for the betrayal. You wait for the storm. Because deep down, you don't believe you deserve ease. That disbelief is not random, it's ancestral. You inherited it from every generation that taught you endurance before self-respect, from every culture that glorified self-sacrifice as the highest moral good, from every story that praised the martyr and ignored the survivor. You were told that love means giving everything, that forgiveness is the ultimate proof of goodness. But what if that belief was designed to control you? What if the world celebrates your softness because it makes you easier to manipulate? What if your moral compass was built to keep you docile? Look around you, the world rewards boundaries with respect and boundless kindness with exploitation. That's not cynicism, it's physics. Energy flows towards strength, not surrender. People trust what stands firm, not what yields to everything. And yet, you've built your identity on yielding. You call it grace, but it's obedience. You call it patience, but it's paralysis. You've turned your fear of rejection into an art form, the art of perpetual accommodation. There's a moment you've felt it when you sense your limits being crossed. That flicker of unease, that quiet tightening in your chest. But before the feeling even forms into words, you silence it. You tell yourself you're overreacting. You tell yourself it's not worth it. And in that instant, another piece of you disappears. Every time you silence that voice, you commit a small act of self-abandonment. And you've done it so many times, it feels normal. You don't even notice the betrayal anymore. It's woven into your kindness, disguised as maturity. You've been trying to be the light in other people's darkness, but light cannot exist without fuel, and your fuel is gone. You are burning yourself to keep others warm. You call it love. It's not love, it's dependency. Dependency masquerading as virtue, submission disguised as grace. You think that to be powerful is to control others. But real power begins with self-possession, the ability to stand in your truth even when it costs you love. You've never been powerless because of what others did to you. You've been powerless because of what you refuse to stop doing to yourself. When you built your identity around forgiveness, you gave away your authorship. You let others write the story of your morality. You handed them the pen and called it love, and they wrote you into a role that benefits them, not you. So here you are, endlessly forgiving, endlessly understanding, endlessly tired. And still, you wonder why peace never stays. Peace cannot exist in a house where self-respect is absent. Your soul has been whispering this truth for years. You are not meant to be endlessly kind. You are meant to be real. The universe doesn't honor endless giving. It honors balance. The tides come in and they retreat. The heart expands and it contracts. But you've been expanding for years, giving, forgiving, accommodating, without ever allowing the return. No wonder you're exhausted. You violated the laws of your own nature, and when you violate nature, nature corrects you. It sends storms, heartbreak, betrayal, disillusionment, not as punishment, but as equilibrium. The fracture that breaks you is the same force that restores balance. So, when your kindness stopped working, it wasn't failure, it was correction. When your forgiveness stopped bringing peace, it wasn't betrayal, it was truth. The illusion had reached its breaking point. And that is where you now stand at the edge of an old identity collapsing under its own weight. The saint is dying, the forgiver is exhausted, the healer is bleeding, and in that exhaustion lies the seed of transformation. Because finally, you can no longer pretend that love and self-betrayal are the same thing. You are beginning to see that the architecture of your suffering was built by your own hands out of guilt, fear, and the desperate need to belong. And that realization, painful as it is your first act of freedom. You have been loyal to the wrong master. You served the illusion that love must cost you everything. You worshipped approval as if it were salvation. And now life has come to reclaim what you gave away. So let it take your illusions. Let it strip you bare. Let it dismantle the scaffolding of false virtue you've been clinging to. Because what will remain when all the false identities have fallen will not be emptiness, it will be truth. And truth, though cold at first, is the beginning of warmth. The kind of warmth that does not depend on anyone's permission. There comes a day when even your strength abandons you. Not suddenly, but like a slow withdrawal. One morning you wake and the mask no longer fits. The words you used to calm yourself sound hollow. The habits that kept you functional begin to rot in your hands. You look around and realize that nothing has truly collapsed except your ability to pretend. It happens quietly, not in the grand drama you imagined, but in a subtle exhaustion, a moment when you simply cannot keep lying to yourself. You cannot keep forgiving out of fear. You cannot keep understanding people who refuse to understand you. You cannot keep decorating your wounds with noble words. That is the fracture. It does not come to destroy you. It comes to separate truth from illusion. You had lived so long inside the fantasy that kindness could redeem cruelty, that love could fix indifference, that patience could transform apathy, and now the illusion finally cracks under its own impossible weight. You see it everywhere, the emptiness behind every conversation that demanded your energy, the hollowness in every relationship where you gave more than was ever asked, only to be forgotten the moment you stopped performing, the coldness of a world that never mirrors back the warmth you pour into it. The realization burns through you. You were not betrayed by them. You were betrayed by the story you told yourself about them. The betrayal was internal. You wrote them into a role they never agreed to play. You expected the world to reflect your depth, and it couldn't. It never could. And so the world shatters, or rather, the illusion of fairness does. The illusion that if you love purely, life will reward you. That if you forgive quickly, peace will follow. That if you remain patient, others will awaken to your worth. None of it was ever true. This is the moment you face the full indifference of existence, the silence of it, the cold honesty that the universe owes you nothing. It's terrifying, yes, but also liberating. Because in that silence, there are no more games, no more bargaining, no more performance, only what is real. You stand alone now, in that unbearable stillness, stripped of all the roles you used to hide behind. You look around, and there is no audience, no one to applaud your forgiveness, no one to need your understanding, no one left to save. And for a moment, you feel empty, weightless, almost non-human. But this is the truth. This emptiness is not death. It is the clearing, the space where the old architecture of illusion has fallen, making room for something truer. You are not collapsing. You are being reborn. The pain that pulses through you now is sacred. It's not punishment, it's purification. It's the fire that burns away everything that is false. You will want to resist it, to call someone, to escape, to rebuild what's gone, but do not run. Sit in the ashes. Let it burn, because until you learn to sit with yourself in ruin, you will never know what real peace feels like. You have lived your entire life surrounded by noise, the noise of approval, of roles, of expectations. But now, in this stillness, you are alone with your truth. You begin to hear it, the faint, trembling voice beneath the rubble, your own. It whispers not comfort, but reality. You were never meant to save anyone. You were meant to see. You begin to see how every disappointment was not cruelty, but correction. How every betrayal was not destruction, but exposure. Each one stripped you of something you were never meant to carry. Each one dragged you closer to authenticity. And perhaps, for the first time, you understand what it means when they say the truth sets you free. Freedom is not bliss, is not ease, is not forgiveness that feels good. Freedom is the collapse of illusion, and collapse never feels gentle. You've mistaken enlightenment for lightness, but enlightenment is heavy. It's the crushing weight of seeing things as they are, not as you wish them to be. And yet, once the eyes adjust, the clarity itself becomes peace. Look closely at your pain. It's not random, it's symmetrical. Every fracture aligns perfectly with the places you once refused to look. Every loss mirrors an attachment you were afraid to release. Every silence from others echoes the silence you held against yourself. Your suffering is the map to your healing. The pain was never against you. It was the language your soul used to tell you, you've gone too far from yourself. You thought the universe was cruel for taking things from you. But what if it was kind? What if the loss was the only way to bring you back? The person who betrayed you, they didn't take anything real. They just removed the fantasy. The one who left you, they didn't ruin you. They revealed the parts of you that were built on dependency. Every ending was mercy in disguise. There's a moment in every awakening when gratitude and grief merge into one feeling. You begin to thank the pain even as it still hurts, because you understand that without it, you'd still be asleep. You start to see that nothing external ever truly belonged to you. Not the relationships, not the recognition, not the imagined safety of being good. They were all props in the play of your becoming. Their purpose was to collapse. And so, the fracture, the one you feared, was not a failure of life's design. It was the design. Pain has always been the sculptor. You were the marble, cold, unshaped, resistant, and the blows you cursed were the very strokes that revealed your form. You begin to realize something quietly revolutionary. You were never meant to be whole in the eyes of others. You were meant to be whole in your own. But before that wholeness comes, there is always the descent, the sacred descent into despair. The dark night of the soul, the chamber where identity dissolves, and the self is reformed, not from comfort, but from clarity. You walk through it alone, trembling. The old self dies in silence. The world feels distant, mechanical, stripped of color. Days pass like ghosts. You are emptied. But what you don't yet see is that emptiness itself is the soil of renewal. Because only when everything false has been burned away can the truth finally take root. You begin to hear life differently. The sound of rain no longer fills the silence. It is the silence. The wind through the trees feels less like background and more like breath. You realize that existence has been speaking all along. It was you who was too busy performing goodness to listen. You start to laugh, quietly, bitterly, beautifully, at the absurdity of it all. How you once thought the universe needed your forgiveness to balance itself. How you once believed your suffering made you special. Now you see it made you blind. Blind to the simplest truth. You are not the center of anyone's world but your own. And that's not tragedy. That's liberation. You no longer need to be loved to feel real. You no longer need to be understood to be whole. You no longer need to be kind to prove your worth. You simply are raw, quiet, unpolished, true. You look at yourself, really, look, and you see the scars. But this time, they don't disgust you. They dignify you. They are not symbols of loss. They are proof that you endured your own becoming. The fracture did not kill you. It killed the illusion of who you thought you needed to be. And in that death, something ancient is reborn, the sovereign self. The one who belongs to no one, owes no performance, seeks no validation. The one who is not forgiving to be virtuous, but because they are too free to carry resentment. You realize now that the world never betrayed you. It only stopped pretending. The rest was your projection. And so, you sit there in the quiet aftermath, surrounded by the debris of the life that once defined you, and you understand. Nothing was ever taken, only revealed. Pain was never your enemy. It was your mirror. It showed you where you were still asleep, where you still believed the lie that love required self-erasure. You have now met yourself in full. The mask has fallen. The play has ended. The silence that follows is not emptiness, it's truth. This is not the end. It is the beginning of sovereignty.